Hi everyone, my name's Ian Brown. I'm doing this webinar again, broadcasting to you all the way from Australia. I'm situated about an hour south of Sydney, if this is your first visit to our webinar. And so if it is your first visit, welcome. If you've been watching a whole series of them, then welcome back, because this is our 10th one. And so we've been going for sort of nearly 3 months now. And it's quite interesting because the pandemic doesn't seem to have let up in lots of different countries, and it seems to be reoccurring a little bit. And the intention of this webinar was always to help parents who are sort of stuck at home with their children, you know, with things being closed down. We're spending a lot more time at home with our kids. And so what we're aiming to do is to give you some ideas, again, some practical ideas that you might be able to use while you're at home with your children. And as well as that, just to give some nice creative visual arts activities that you might be able to do with your children, even if they are back at preschool and you're just doing some things on the weekend with them. What we always do on these webinars is that we try to do a few different things. So the intention is that we like to give you a little bit of theory or a little bit of background about child development and get an understanding of the sorts of things that you might like to learn about how your children is growing up. This webinar series is about creativity. It's about how do you develop creative responses in your children, and where your children are at in terms of the development of their creative responses, the sorts of things that they're doing. And we've always sort of, over the last few weeks, we've tried to help parents to sort of get an understanding about what do we mean by, you know, some really creative things to do with children, so that they're not just following lots of instructions or coming up with something that, you know, that they don't even recognize as being their own art. So that's one of our aims today. So what we'll be doing is we'll be doing a little bit of theory type based stuff just to start us off with, in terms of recapping and having a look at what do we mean by process art? What do we mean by art that is truly creative and truly has an idea where children can actually enjoy what they're doing and have an individual response, and so that they use their imagination and they use their creativity. So we're going to talk about process art very quickly. We're then going to actually go back and have a look. We've spent a couple of weeks looking at the Reggio Emilia approach, which is an approach to how children learn, a philosophy about education, but more importantly, a philosophy about creativity and what does it mean for your children. So we've been using that approach in a number of the webinars, and we'll do that again today, because we'll go back and have a very quick look at what a provocation is. This is our final one, this is our 10th one, so we can actually start to pull these things together. We also like to give you some activities that you can do with your children. And today I think you'll enjoy it. I think kids would really enjoy this one. It's about shadows and light. And looking at shadows and look at an artist's work and what they do. And then as we described in our worksheet, and what we planned today is how do you actually display children's artworks, and why is it important to display them? Why is it important not just to, you know, to put them away or throw them away or, you know, rip them up or whatever? And so we're going to actually look at really, really creative ways that you can actually display and make them, you know, that your children will enjoy. So that's, and then finally, you know, in the last minute or two, we'll just talk very quickly about our Voices project, which has been going on for 10 weeks now, which should be interesting. So just to recap in terms of process art, what do we mean by process art? And what does it mean not to just do, you know, sometimes when, you know, you can go onto the internet and you can just find thousands and thousands of different art and craft activities to do with children. But unfortunately, when you actually have a look at them, there's lots and lots and lots of those activities that are on the internet, which in actual fact aren't very creative. They're a bit boring for children. And you know, I often look and sort of think, well, if you're putting something up that your child has trouble trying to figure out which is their artwork, that's a good measure to tell me that perhaps the activity that they're doing isn't very creative at all. And quite often it's a blackline master, or quite often it's some sort of stereotyped image that children just actually add to. So just to recap, and let's think about it. Well, I'm going to show you a very short video which is talking about process art. So let's have our first video, and then we'll talk about it after that.
At UGrow, our art program allows children to express their individuality. Process art at UGrow allows children the freedom to be open-ended, the freedom to choose how do they want to create a flower, how do they want to create a house. It is their own interpretation. Product art means we're providing a sample, we're giving guidance on what is first step, what's the second step. There's an end result for that. Process art, there's no end result for that. It is open-ended for a child. Parents can get involved with process versus product art at home by encouraging children to do their art their own way. How do they want to create a flower? How do they want to create a house? It is their own interpretation. If we tell children the house has a triangle roof and a square base, that's not allowing children to really go beyond the scheme of a house. And it's a balance between process and product art, because there are times when a teacher needs a step-by-step instruction to get an end product. But then there are many times that we want children to be authentic and to be original and to show their expression in their own way.
Okay, so that was a really quick, just little introduction, and it's nice to actually start with something like that because it's bright and it's colourful, and the emphasis that it's saying to parents is that, you know, that the activity that they're doing should be open in some way. So in other words, if you start with something that has an end result that's going to look like this, quite often those little crafty packs that you buy, you know, it will have. And there's nothing wrong with doing them all. You know, it's just that I wouldn't be using them all the time. But what you've got to think of is, you know, if things are already cut out for them, you know, the eyes are always going to go in that same position, or whatever it might be. That's the part where it's not an open-ended activity. It's not something for them. So I'm going to push that a little bit. But what I'd like to do now is I'll show you one which sort of talks about the theory of what a process art's about, because this is the sort of thing that you should be doing in your home. So let's go to the second video. Thank you.
As we begin to explore the value of process art for young children, let's first take a moment to distinguish the difference between process-focused art experiences and product-focused experiences. So, what is the difference? Let's start with product-focused experiences. These typically begin with an end product in mind. The adult usually chooses that end product, and the children use designated materials and follow a specific set of instructions to create the final product. These experiences tend to be more craft-like in nature, and the emphasis is really on achieving that desired end product. If children are cutting out patterns, coloring in lines, or copying a model of some sort, it's likely a product-focused experience. With these types of experiences, there's really little opportunity for children to make choices or express their own creativity. In fact, children may even have a hard time identifying their own work when it's on display because all of the finished products are so similar. Because these experiences are often very adult directed, you might even find that children lack motivation to become engaged in the experience. And because there's typically one right way to complete the product, you might even see children feeling frustrated or wanting to give up if they can't seem to get it just right.
Process-focused art experiences, on the other hand, are the opposite of product-focused experiences. Process art is child-directed, choice-driven, and celebrates the experience of discovery. In process art, the final product will be unique, and the focus is really on the process of creating and not on the final outcome. Process art is open-ended and playful in nature. There's no one right way to do it. Children can engage with materials at their developmental level and in ways that interest them. Children are motivated to learn about various materials and to make decisions about how to use them as they explore and discover. A child's final artwork may not look like anything, and that's okay because it's really about exploring, experimenting, and learning from what they are creating. It's all about letting children try out a variety of techniques, tools, and processes as they engage in artful experiences and find ways to express their feelings, thoughts, and ideas. Over time and with experience, children's artwork will start to evolve from simply exploration to more representation. As children imagine, experiment, and investigate creative materials, they learn how different types of media can be used to communicate. They should have opportunities to draw, to paint, to cut and tear, to glue, to shape, to sculpt, to mold, and construct. When we approach art like open-ended play, we can provide a variety of materials and follow children's lead. These types of experiences support children's gross motor and fine motor development as they use their bodies, their hands, and their fingers. Their cognitive development is supported as they plan, predict, observe, problem solve, and think critically about their own work. Their social emotional development will flourish as they're able to try new ideas and experience success. Process art allows children to relax and focus and express their thoughts and feelings. It also offers many opportunities for children to work together with their peers. Their language development is supported when children talk about their artwork and describe their unique creations. We can support their literacy development when we write down what they say about their work. This helps them to see the connection between the spoken word and the written word. We can talk to children about their artwork. Instead of using general praise statements like good job or I love your painting, we can acknowledge their work by describing in more detail what we see, noticing their efforts and encouraging the children to talk about their processes and their creations. We might say, I see that you are creating a sculpture with those cardboard boxes. Look how you've stacked them on top of each other. Or you've been working on your painting for a very long time. I can tell that you're really focused. Or we might just say, tell me about your picture. This lets children know that we are interested in their work and their efforts. It also supports them to think about their work in new ways. We can be very intentional about using rich vocabulary words while we describe what we see. We can help children see themselves as artists as we honor and display their work in an attractive manner. When hanging children's artwork, it's important to display it at children's eye level so they can appreciate and admire their own work and the work of their peers. When we provide children with opportunities to engage in process art experiences, we support their creativity, their imaginative thinking, and their development across all domains.
Okay, so over the last 10 weeks, what we've done is we've looked at different types of things. So we've looked at painting, and we've looked at drawing, we've looked at three-dimensional works. We've looked at using artists' work to actually inspire and motivate children to create. And we've tried to give you lots of different ones. So today I thought I would do something that's completely different. The Reggio Emilia approach, one of the things that they do is they have set up within their classrooms is like a little art studio. So the intention is that, they don't even use the word classroom. The idea is that the space that they work in is like an artist studio, and they use inside the room as well as outside the room. They take children on excursions, they take them outside, they look at things, they collect, they come back in, they create art. And one of the nice ones that they do, and you might like to Google this to have a look at it, they do a lot of work with something like shadow and light. Now, I was trying to find things that you might be able to do in your kitchen, and most of the stuff that we've done over the last couple of weeks are with found objects and resources that you don't have to go out and buy. So shadow and light is something that is a really easy one to use. And what I would like to do is, I've got some really inspirational type little videos that are just very quick ones just to show you how do young children actually use shadow and light in their art and create something from it? So the next video I want to show you, which is video number 3, we'll have that one now. It's a very quick one. Okay, so that's a very simple idea of just actually using children's toys, things that they're familiar with, get the child to actually go and find something. Can be an interesting shadow, can be an interesting shape. And then you either just use the natural sunlight or you set something up. So let's have a look at the next video. This one is just video number 4, and we'll just have a very quick, it's again a nice quick one to show you how children use this. Okay, so that's a bit of a fun one to do with kids as well. So what you'll notice that from those is that what they're suggesting in that little video is that, you know, it doesn't all have to be drawing. You start with the drawing and then you can do some painting, you can do some construction, you can do some collage with glue and sticking papers and pieces on it. And then they finished up with that little video, which was quite interesting, where they actually took it out onto the footpath. And they just use the natural light. And quite often kids like to do that themselves. So you might actually, if you've got 2 little toddlers, you might get one to actually stand with the sun behind them and cast a shadow, and get your other child to actually trace that shadow onto the footpath, and using some chalk. So what that little video went for like a minute. And in that minute, there must have been about 6 or 7 different ideas that you might like to incorporate at home. Again, you'll notice that in those videos, they actually just use things that the children are familiar with. So, you know, the children's toys, things that are around the house, different shapes that create interesting shadows. And you can either set the light source up yourself by putting the lamp, or you could actually just use the sun, which is quite interesting. I think you'll like the next little video because it's more for, as an adult, it's really interesting to see how an artist takes this whole concept and pushes it a little bit further. So this one is about looking at how an artist actually pulls together everyday objects and the sorts of things. So I think you might find this one really interesting. Thank you. We'll have the next one. Okay, so that I'm going to push that one a little bit further now, because that artist is really fascinating in the way that he actually uses different shapes, but then creates the artworks or his little drawings as a result of it. And it would be a really nice thing for you to work with your child and figure out how the sorts of things that you might be able to put together. I think kids would actually quite enjoy this little video as well. So let's have a look at the next one. It's a little longer version of where they talk to the artist and he actually describes the process he goes through. Thank you.
My name is Vincent Ball, I'm from Belgium, and I'm a shadowologist. Now, what does that mean? Well, I make drawings with the shadows of everyday objects. And it all started with the shadow of this teacup. One day I was working on a script and the sun was shining on my desk and I saw that the shadow of this teacup looked a lot like an elephant. So I drew some lines, I took a picture, and I'm also addicted to all the screens and social media, so I posted this picture on Facebook and Instagram and people really seemed to like it. So I said, okay, I'm gonna try to make one of these pictures every day. Let's see if I can make 100. After a while I was doing it, I thought I should come up with a name for this technique. So I thought of shadowology, because I like to think of it as something very serious and very scientific. So this is the place where I work most of the time. And I sit here, I take an object I like, and I put it on the paper till I see something. Sometimes I don't see anything. I buy all sorts of crazy stuff as long as they're not too expensive. And then I hope that something will appear. It's a bit like watching at the clouds and see if you recognize a shape. That's what I do, basically. When I'm finished, I take a picture, and that's it. It's very important for me to work with an open mind. It doesn't work when I say, now I'm gonna make a Christmas tree, because then I'm really stuck at looking for this. I have to be very open-minded and try to look at this shadow with the possibility that it could be anything. And another thing, working with the sun, you have to be really quick because the sun is moving all the time. So at one point the shadow will be here and then 5 minutes later it's already here. So you have to be really quick. And of course when you have a good idea, something will sabotage you and a cloud will become for the sun. So working with the sun is really stressful. That's why I have these little friends, the lamps. And I can really play with it a lot. And if I don't like this light, maybe this light will work. It's true that after a while it gets harder to make new images because the first time you see a sea coming out of a glass, it's like, wow, but you can't always make the same picture. So I sometimes have to look and look, and sometimes I think it's finished, I will never make another shadowology image again, but then something pops up and I'm amazed as always. And I think that's the thing that I love most about doing this, is that I'm surprised myself at what comes out.
Okay, so that was a bit of fun. I think that's a nice one for all the adults who are watching, so that how do you take some idea like that, a very, very simple idea, which is the idea of looking at shadow and light. You can do it with younger children, and then you can do it with older children, and it's really interesting as an adult to actually have a look at how that artist works with those images and the sorts of things. So if that's not using your imagination, I don't know what is, because that's a chance for you to actually push your child to actually think about what might it look like when it's the shadow. It's a nice, creative, imaginative activity. It's certainly not that product-oriented art that we talked about before. So what we're going to do now, so there's some ideas that you might be able to use in the next couple of weeks with your children, finding things that are common, things that you might find in your own home, and then moving on from there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to talk to you about when we talked about the Reggio Emilia approach to learning, what we did was we talked about the idea of provocations. In other words, provoking your child to actually be creative and to be imaginative. And so, excuse me for a moment.
Sorry about that.
That was the my little dog coming through its door. I thought it was going to end up on my lap. Okay, so what we're talking about now is the whole concept of provocation, and what does a provocation mean? So what it's saying is that how do you provoke your child to actually do it? So I'm going to share my screen now, and we're going to actually have a look at what sort of things can you do in your home, and my voice will come over the top of it, and we'll just have a look at some of those things. So if I go to share my screen, and we'll click on this one and share, and then we'll go to this one. So hopefully my voice is coming over the top of it, and we're having a look at what sort of provocations can you do at home. So this is a nice little collage of bits and pieces, and I've got the resources at the end of it, or the references that you might like to have a look at. But the idea is that it doesn't have to be a classroom. You can set these little provocations up at home, on a table, something that's going to provoke learning with your child and something that they'll be interested in. For example, in this one, they've just got very, very quickly, they've just got images of trees. They've got a little wire sculpture of a tree and a piece of timber, and then some wire so that children can actually start to create and develop their own little trees, and that's based on an artist's work. So if you see this one, the children have actually just worked on it. Again, something you can do at home. It doesn't need to be something that's done in a classroom. There's lots and lots of ideas there. This one here, what they're doing is, can you build a picture? And what they've got is little picture frames, and then they've got glass beads, bottle tops, little things that you can actually pull together. And they're creating the image inside the frame, but it just can move. At the end of that, it's like a little collage type thing where you can actually take the things back and put them back and use them again, and they can come up with lots of different ideas. So it's not a finished product. This one's an assemblage where you're actually putting things together. This one's talking about mandala, which is a circular shape, and children love those circular shapes. And so, because that's one of their drawings that they start from as working out. And all they do here is they actually create the shapes, but you'll notice that all of these things have got something that's going to motivate the children. So there's some little images. They don't have to copy those. It just gives them some ideas that they can work with. Here's a little one this is using Andy Goldsworthy, which we used about 3 weeks ago on our environmental one. And so what they've got is they've got an Andy Goldsworthy book there to give some motivation. They then have selected some ideas, things like dried oranges, bits and pieces, flowers, and then they've come up with some ideas. But what I would like you to concentrate on is, and have a look at how it's being presented. They're not just thrown down, they're in little baskets, and Reggio Emilia does that in their art studios. Things are set up in a particular way so they look beautiful, and so that they've got places that, you know, they're actually displayed in a particular way. And we're going to talk about display at the end. Taking your child out, this is just magnifying glasses so they could look at large things, you know, very tiny things, and then actually magnify them. This one, what they've done is got some funny faces, and you'll notice what the provocation is here and the resources they've got. They've just got old keys, they've got some nuts and bolts and screws and things like that to come up with some funny faces in that way. The cork mats, just your normal cork mats that you would use in the kitchen. But notice again, a little box, and they've got lots of bits and pieces, they've been separated. Some drawings. You'll notice also in the Emilia approach, they tend to use mirrors an awful lot. So what they're doing here is that they will either put mirrors down onto the table so that the child's actually looking at it, or they might even just have mirrors in front of them that they might be able to draw their face from that way. So their portraits are actually coming from them. Again, this is a treasure map where they're getting children to actually, what would you use if you were a pirate and you've just read a book about pirates, the sorts of things that you would do. But you'll notice it's just not plonked onto the table. It's not just placed there. It's all categorized. They've got little containers. They've got bits and pieces. So they've got chocolate lollies over on the right-hand side that look like gold coins. And then they've got some what, pirates might like, which are jewels and things like that. And these are some of the ideas that they've come up with. And here the children have actually used just a little bit of Play-Doh and then constructed a whole treasure map. So what they've done here is you can either do it one way or the other. You can actually start with your treasure map and get them to draw it as a result of after reading the story. And then they recreate it in 3 dimensions, or you do the opposite. You recreate a treasure map in 3 dimensions and then get them to draw it. So the way that they're set out, I thought this was a lovely photo because it actually just shows how they've got it. The paper is categorized into different colors. The textures are in one container. The scissors are in another container. And then it's all very beautifully presented so that then children get an idea. So it's not just, again, thrown on the table. Here's a nice little provocation, which has sort of got dinosaurs and stones and cars, and then children come up with some type of story. I like this one. It has mirrors, it's got magnifying glasses, and bits and pieces, little stations for children to work at, which you can do at home as well. And again, if you look at this one, they set up mirrors so the children are looking at it down at what they're working on, and they have loose parts that they actually arrange on the mirrors. Okay, so I'll just stop that sharing now. The next one I would like to very, very quickly, what we've done over the past couple of weeks is that we often use, we did a whole session on using children's books and what does that mean. And so what I would like to do now is I want to show you just a very short part of a book that might be a really good inspiration for you at home that you can use with your children. So let's have number 7, our video number 7.
Welcome to Beefy Story Time. Do you want to read this book with me? Don't forget to click the subscribe button for more. Rosie Revere, Engineer by Andrea Beatty. Illustrated by David Roberts. This is the story of Rosie Revere, who dreamed of becoming a great engineer. In Lila Greer's classroom at Blue River Creek, young Rosie sat shyly, not daring to speak. But when no one saw her, she peeked in the trash for treasures to add to her engineer's stash. And late at night, Rosie rolled up her sleeves and built in her hideaway under the eaves. Alone in her attic, the moon high above, dear Rosie made gadgets and gizmos she loved. And when she grew sleepy, she hid her machines far under the bed where they'd never be seen. When Rosie was young, she had not been so shy. She worked with her hair swooping over one eye and made fine inventions for uncles and aunts, a hot dog dispenser and helium pants. The uncle she loved most was zookeeper Fred. She made him a hat to keep snakes off his head, from parts of a fan and some cheddar cheese spray, which everyone knows keeps the pythons away.
Okay, so that was Rosie Revere, Engineer, and I'm going to show a very quick one again, and then I'll come back and talk to you about what you should be doing with your children with those books. All right, so let's have the last one, which is The Most Magnificent Thing, number 8.
And now, The Most Magnificent Thing. Written and illustrated by Ashley Spires. This is a regular girl and her best friend in the whole wide world. They do all kinds of things together. They race, they eat, they explore, they relax. She makes things. He unmakes things. One day, the girl has a wonderful idea. She is going to make the most magnificent thing. She knows just how it will look. She knows just how it will work. All she has to do is make it, and she makes things all the time. Easy peasy. First, she hires an assistant. Next, they gather their supplies. They set up somewhere out of the way and get to work. The girl tinkers and hammers and measures, while her assistant pounces and growls and chews. When she is finished,
Okay, so there's two books that you could use with your children about actually inventing or making or building or constructing or doing something like that. We never know. Well, you'll have to get the books to actually find out what happens at the end of them. Both of those books you'll notice are on the read aloud, which, so if you Google the names of the books, you will actually get somebody to actually read the book for you. So you don't even have to have the book at home. You can actually just go onto Google, get your child to listen to the story, and then you can come up with it. So I'm going to share my screen again and just go back to those very, very quickly to the sorts of things that you could do as a result of after you listen to that story. So if I go back to sharing here, this is Rosie Revere, engineer, and you'll notice that some person has set up a little activity here for them, you know, what we call a provocation, but it's just an activity table. So they've got the book, Rosie Revere, they've also got the book, The Most Magnificent Thing, and then in that little collection of things, they've got found objects and bits and pieces of things and things that you could construct and things that you might pull together. So you do the story and then you come up with some ideas that you might be able to enjoy. Here's some of the children's activities that they came up with. They've connected wires, they've got found objects that they've stuck into a bit of Play-Doh or a bit of plasticine and things like that. And they've come up with lots of things. And this child has made a potato maker. And they'll be able to describe to you the sorts of things that they can make with this potato maker. And then this one here, again, is like the last one I talked about. You can either start with a drawing, which is a remote control, or you do the opposite. You actually build the remote control and then you can actually get your child to do some drawings as a result of it. So it's pushing it a little bit further and getting them to use their imagination. Here's another one. There's 4 different ones here where they've actually taken all those bits and pieces. They don't, you know, it's an imaginative play. It's something exciting that children would like to do. And, you know, at the end of it, then you can actually deconstruct it if you want to, or you can leave it on display for a couple of days if you want. Here's a lovely one where they're just using emojis and they're just using Play-Doh and some eyes and bits and pieces. And the children have used their imagination to come up with some emoji that they might like, such as this one, which is the Queen. Okay, so I'll stop sharing here. So we're running close to time now. So the last section, so what we've done is we've had a little bit of theory. We've looked at some ideas like shadow and light that you might be able to do with your children. Then we've looked at some provocations or some ideas or some things that you could set up where children could get some great things happening, some creative and use their imagination. And now I'm going to finish the session with looking at how do you display children's works, because this is really interesting. A lot of preschools will send work home and schools send some work home and parents put their children's artworks up on the fridge, but there's lots and lots of really interesting ways to make it look good. And especially you don't want, you know, if you want your house to look beautiful and you want it to look very modern and nice and display the children's work nicely, then you can come up with some ideas. You know, and again, very inexpensive things that you can do. And I'm going to show you lots and lots of ideas. But, you know, these are just little pegs and some string that I found, which is like a zebra looking string. So nice little black pegs and some zebra string. to string your children's work along, instead of just sticking them with a piece of sticky tape or masking tape onto the wall. So that's a bit of fun thing to do. This one here, this is a lovely idea. This is just it's a magnet, and what it is that it's a long, thin piece of wire, and these little wooden balls are just, you can just stick them onto it. So I'm going to, just for the last couple of minutes, very quickly just lead you through. If you've got a pen at home and you want to write some of these ideas down, it might be a good idea. And then there's some references at the end of it. Now our worksheet, I've given you a worksheet, and the worksheet on that has some references that you might like to actually look at. So let's have a look. I'm going to share my screen again, and my voice will come over the back of it, and we're just going to very, very quickly go through lots and lots of different ideas that you might want to use. So, display ideas. Well, let me just get into here. Okay, creative ways to display children's art. All right, so the one on the left is what they've done here is they've actually used something like Photoshop or some sort of photographic editor and put a number of children's artworks onto one and then had them printed as a poster. What a simple idea. The one on the right-hand side is just using cutout mount boards but you'll notice that it's not just one little idea, it's lots of them. How good is this one? And this is just using family photos where the children have actually drawn pictures of the family. And then what they've done here is they've just used, decorated themselves some little frames and made those little frames to actually highlight and display. Again, this is the one where we're just looking at printing, you know, at where you would go and do photocopying and what you're doing here. But what's lovely about this one is that you've got, you know, 12 different images from your child all on the one. So this one here, quite interesting because all it is that they've gone to an op shop type place where they've bought some old frames and then they've just colored the frames and made them interesting. This one, so they've colored all the frame, all different shapes and sizes. And then what they've done is they've actually just colored them all in with the same colored paint to give it some consistency. And then they've put children's artworks in. Now what's inside here is cork. And so what they've done is they're actually, this was like a, you know, this exhibition could just be changing weekly with different things inside the frames. This one, glass frames. I love this one. It's all it is like I just described before, where they've just taken some string, got some colored pegs, or this one over here, what they've used is just bulldog clips. Again, different ways to display. How simple is this one? It's just a coat hanger, a pants or a coat hanger where they've got the clips on the bottom and you can just change the artwork every week. I love this. This is just, the child has taken a photograph of their artwork and then this is like a photo book where you actually put it together. So there's nothing else. You don't even need words in it. It could just be a whole book of their art. This is a great idea. It's just clipboards, very, very simple. Lots of clipboards all put together up on the wall and using either bulldog clips on this side or just using a clipboard idea. This is a huge poster print that's been made on canvas using one of the children's artworks. How about this one? This is just a nice idea from a place like IKEA where you've got just a curtain rod with curtain rods, and then what they've done is they've attached it. And I've seen these that you can actually buy them. So they're very, very simple ideas. Again, the stretched wire idea that we talked about before. This one is just a series of clips, what we call bulldog clips. And then, so, you know, that artwork could change all the time. So these are ones from home. These aren't necessarily classrooms. This one's a lovely idea because you've got display areas up here for the children's work. And then down in the bottom section of them, you've actually got, so there are materials. So here you've got a nice little display area. Again, shops like IKEA sell them for, they're not very expensive. I love this one. Look at, and this is just picture frames And then what they've done is they've put the children's artworks into it so it becomes like a mobile, and you can hang that in their bedroom. Again, nice little ones. Again, this one here, they use cork, as I said before, and you can just move it around. This one's a little bedroom where they've actually used cork tiles, and then they've just collected them and moved them along. How nice is this one, where they've got, you know, the child's photographs above it, and then down below it, you've just got lots and lots of different images. So you don't have to put one image in, you can actually have a number of different ones. Clipboards again, curtain rods, but have a look at this one. This is just made up of an old bed that somebody has got, an old mattress, metal mattress base, and then they've just used that. These are decals. Now, decals are an interesting thing because you can actually buy these, and they just stick onto the wall, and you can peel them off later. And then what they've done is they've actually used those decals to actually put the artworks into it. This is a nice one where they've just used multiple little artworks, mounted them on what we call foam board, and so that the artwork is mounted and then displayed into a nice display. And again, as I said, the artworks look so nice once they're there. This one is bunting, what we call bunting, where you actually festoon the artworks and you cut up pieces of the interesting artworks and turn them into some type of bunting. Beautiful bedrooms with artworks that have been framed. Time has been taken to make sure that they look fantastic. Look at this one where they've just used one colour over, one colour frame with the children's artworks. This is a very cheap system that you can buy in IKEA where children's artworks can actually be displayed. And again, this is what I was talking about with you can actually have decals where you can stick them onto the wall, like they'll peel off afterwards. And this one here, every child is an artist, that's what Pablo Picasso said. And again, just a stretched, nice frame. So there's some references and resources if you wanted them. Okay, so we've only got a couple of minutes left. And what I would like to just finish up with is just to talk to you about, you'll notice that, I mean, there was about 50 different ideas that I've just put up of how you can actually display children's works. But the things that comes through very clearly is that they're done very, they've been thought about in the way they do it, that they use a really nice frame or a framing system. So they're not just stuck up with a piece of sticky tape or a piece of masking tape. They're done in a particular way so that the children will value what they're doing. So display helps you engage your child. So in other words, the children love to actually look at their own work as they're being displayed. And what you're doing is that you're not just putting it up in a very haphazard way, you're actually thinking about how you actually might want to do that. What you're doing is you're showing support to your child. You're supporting them and you're supporting their creative development in the way that you can actually help them to look after their work, honor their work, and be able to make sure that their work looks worthwhile. The other thing is that it's really nice for children to actually be able to walk in and identify their work. My grandchildren like to show me when I go to their house their new works that they've got, and they're up on display, up on the mantelpiece or looking in that way. So that's important, and it encourages a love of art. So if you're trying to get your child to be, to enjoy art, to love art, to value what they do, then what you need to do is also value the sorts of things that they will do. So I'll finish at that point, and what I would like to say is remember to go back and have a look at your Voices project, because we're really encouraging you to upload some photographs from your child, the ones that they've taken, and upload some of the images that they've got of their artworks that they've produced. So that brings us to the end of our 10 weeks. Hopefully we're going to have a nice big exhibition of the Voices of Children artworks, and then you'll hear about that, and you should have been sent a link where we need you to upload, and we're encouraging parents to upload their children's works, pictures that they've taken and pictures of their artworks. So that brings us to the end of our 10 weeks. I hope that you've learned something about display today and the importance of it, and you've learned something about some ideas that you've got with shadow and light. So this is goodbye from me, and thank you very much for listening.